Nobody knows even why some houses are called haunted.
What would you call this place?
Well, diseased, sick, crazy, if you like. Such houses are described in the Bible as lepers. Before that, in Homer's race for the underworld, a house of Hades.
Hello everybody, this is Irene from the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK radio network. With me today is Pickles P with the Para and my co-host Christian Delaney.
Hello there.
And I nearly forgot your name.
You remembered the parrot though, that was the important thing.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? I did. Now listen, I have had one hell of a weekend.
Yeah.
My mind is all over the place. I am absolutely worn out. I've had 2 grandchildren here this weekend and my son, and my God, they absolutely drain me.
Yeah, they can be very energetic, can't they, kids?
Very energetic. Yeah, I'm talking about my son. No, I love them all, but you know, we've been today. They've been on the tractor today.
Oh, right.
Actually, yeah, round around the garden. My lawn is full of circles, absolutely full of circles.
No UFOs involved. That's the main thing.
No UFOs involved. No, nothing like that at all. Anyway, how's your time been? Did you enjoy your bank holiday?
I did, and I had a similar experience to you. I spent all my time being a climbing frame, or a human climbing frame for children. My niece and nephew, I was looking after them for a while, so I really enjoyed it, but it was very tiring.
Oh, it was a case of Uncle do the babysitting, yeah?
Yeah. I took them into the quarry today, which is a local sort of family area.
You took them to the quarry?
Yeah, it's called the quarry, but it's not an actual quarry. It's just the name for like a family meeting area, big open grass area. And they had sort of a race day for children. You know, there are lots of events, that sort of thing.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Right, okay, let's get on with the show because we're running late. I know we're running late. And like I said, my mind is still not here at the moment. So would you like to introduce our guest?
Oh yes, it's Mr. Offut. Is that correct? Do I get the name right?
Yes, you got the name right.
Jason Offut, and you have quite a variety of interests, do you not? You have I think you have a book out to do with monsters, cryptids. Is that right?
Black-eyed children. You've got several books, haven't you? I've never seen anyone write as many books as you, Jason.
Well, I teach at a university, and I have 4 months off a year, so I've got plenty of time to write.
So he gets one out a week.
Not quite. One a year, sometimes 2, but yeah, that's my limit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's taken me. I've got 3 books out there at the moment and two or three in the pipeline, and I've been at it for 10 years. 10 years. The Spy in Paris, that's been in the writing now for 3 years. Literally 3 years. Oh, my God, now I've got problems. Okay. Marcus is on the, what's it? Hang on a moment. Right. I can't open it up. I can't find it. Carry on. Talk. Jason,
Yes.
I'm sorry about this being such an absolute balls up, darling. But can you introduce yourself, talk about yourself or something for the moment? Let people know exactly who you are.
Okay, as you all correctly pronounce my name, it's Jason Offut. That gets butchered all over the place. I'm grew up around a small town of about 800 people. I grew up outside on a farm. So I've done quite a few things in my life. One of my favorite things that I didn't do was become a farmer. My father made sure of that. He specifically told me I would never want to do this, and hog manure, shoveling it all the time really kind of helped solidify that. But I'd always wanted to write. I became a journalist after college, newspaper journalist for 17 years, and then I've been teaching it for 14. I've got 15 books out. 5 of them are on the paranormal. I've got a travel book, a parody survival guide called How to Kill Monsters Using Common Household Items.
Oh, great.
And 3 novels, and I just finished my 4th. Hopefully somebody will bite on that.
Yeah? Is this a novel as well that you just finished?
It's I'm still working with the title of it, but it's a humorous science fiction novel about time jumps and parallel dimensions. So it's kind of scattered and fun.
Mm.
Really interesting, that. Yeah, brilliant.
That's good. I've got one novel, one autobiography, and one based on the truth out there.
What, the biography's not based on the truth?
Well, yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
That's the boring stuff. That's the boring stuff, isn't it? So you've written quite a lot of books, absolutely quite a lot of books. And I admire you for that. You know, honestly, I'm so lazy when it comes to writing. And I know I should. I've got people screaming at me for these books, especially the spy books, but it absolutely, I just can't get in gear with them. You know,
this is the advice that I give, because people will ask me, I mean, Jason, how do you do this? And the first book is the hardest. After that, they get a lot easier, and you've already got 3 finished. But I've discovered that if you make room a couple of hours each day to write, whether you're in the mood or not, and you write until the book's finished, you can get it done fairly quickly.
I'd be putting my egg timer on and timing it, you know. Couple of hours, turning it every 6 minutes. Okay, yeah. I don't know. I just can't get into it. I really can't. But you're into monsters, aren't you? Yeah.
I've always been into monsters. When I was a kid in elementary school, and they were passing out book order forms, I would pick books on Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. That's what I was interested in.
Oh, so you like Nessie then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. We have got quite a few loch monsters, I believe, but I can't. I could never pronounce the names. I really couldn't.
The Latin names.
Well, there's one, and I can't pronounce the name, that's in Sweden, and it's described as a Loch Ness monster style monster, and the belief in it is so it is so solid that Sweden passed a law that if anybody injures it or finds one of its eggs, they can go to jail.
Well,
right.
I think that's good because let's face it, these creatures are pretty rare.
I would say so. And what would you do if you found its egg? You keep mentioning your egg timer. I don't know how long would you have to boil the thing.
Me. But
I've been to Sweden. Which part of Sweden was it? If you don't mind me asking.
I don't remember. Okay. I probably do a really quick web search and come up with it, but I don't remember.
Is it part of like general Swedish folklore? Is it just sort of this whatever it is? This sea? Is it? Do you think it's a throwback from the Jurassic or Plesiosauric period or something like that? Maybe.
Well, and that's what a lot of these a lot of these monsters are. I mean, across the world. Australia has a type of monster that's described as sort of a plesiosaur type monster. In North America, we've got Champ, we've got Tahoe Tessie, we've got Ogopogo up in Canada, and they're all described as, like the Loch Ness Monster, looking like a plesiosaur, which living, remnant dinosaurs, if they live, and that's one of my favorite things to think about. The monster, it's a folklorish monster. I will spell out the name of it: STORSJ, an O with an umlaut, an O without an umlaut, JJ. Uret there.
Wow. It's a mouthful.
I got Sturgeon. I got the first part, Sturgeon, and then I lost you after that. But there's also one in Lake Como, so I've heard.
Well, in Italy?
Because I've been looking at houses around Lake Como, and I read it on when I was looking at these houses, it was on the description of the area. So I know there's one in Lake Como.
Well, and that's when I was researching my book on American monsters, I had to leave out a number of the lake monsters because there were just so many. I was going to, repeat myself state after state after state.
Yeah.
And look at what could these things be? I mean, really, could they be a plesiosaur? Especially, let's go looking at Loch Ness. That place is cold. That's cold water. I don't know if it could survive there, but given the fact that our oceans are 95% unexplored, I would think that there very well could be some prehistoric dinosaur, swimming dinosaur that could still be alive somewhere.
It's got to be in very deep water, hasn't it? The Lake Como is actually deeper than Loch Ness. So, yeah, I believe.
Is there any inlets out to sea then for Lake Como? Or is it just completely
I don't know, because I haven't got there yet.
Because that's the only theory behind Loch Ness, isn't it? That there is some sort of hidden inlet that somehow gets out to the wider world.
The point is the loch, is it a saltwater? No, is it a saltwater loch?
I don't. I don't think so. I don't think so.
It's not, is it?
It does have a connection with the ocean.
I don't know the answer to that. I'll find out.
Yeah, but surely these things, they're either freshwater or they're saltwater. If they're saltwater, I can understand it going out to sea and one thing or another. But if it's a freshwater animal, is it?
Yeah.
And yet it opens up into the sea.
37 kilometers. Yeah. 23 miles. Yeah.
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 I know it opens up into the sea. I saw the film.
His films are always
where I had to jump the barrier,
Yeah.
Do you remember what that film was? Yeah. Anyway, crazy. But there's so many monsters out there, and you're the king of monsters as far as I can tell, Jason.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's a crown I'll wear happily.
Yeah.
It's
true. Everyone, whenever I've spoken to anybody, they've said, just talk to Jason. Talk to Jason. If I want to know something to do with monsters. I'm not well up on monsters. There's plenty of living around here, but, they're four-legged type monsters, I'm afraid.
I don't know. The only monsters I'm scared of are the hairless two-legged ones.
You're talking about my husband.
Yeah.
Getting back on this now. Bigfoot, come on. Bigfoot. Now we got the Willowoos up in Scotland. We got the Traymore here in Wales, because that's where I am at the moment. Although I'm from London, I'm living here in Wales at the moment. We got the Traymore here in Wales. Traymore.
Whereabouts is that they see that or have seen?
My back garden. I'm not kidding you.
I will just leave that there. That's all I need to know.
No, Tremor. Apparently, it's been seen, I believe, around the Snowdon area.
Oh, right. It's a big mountain.
This is what I want to know. Do these things migrate? Do they go off on a hunt for a woman or a female when they're in the mood for courting? Because I'm absolutely certain that I've seen it done here in Carmarthen.
Really?
Carmarthenshire, yeah. I live in Carmarthenshire, Merlin country, you see.
Well, when it comes to there's a lot of speculation about that. There was I don't remember what university this researcher was from, but he was interested in Bigfoot, and he took stock. He took stock of the number of Bigfoot sightings in the state of California and the states that border California, and also the what time of year they happened. And he compared that to other animal migrations. And what he found was that the Bigfoot sightings corresponded with migration of deer and rabbits of all things, and animals that Bigfoot has been seen by eyewitnesses having killing and feeding upon. So he was suggesting that yes. Bigfoot is a migratory animal that just follows the food, and that's what we used to do when we were hunter-gatherers. Yeah, we followed the food.
That's true, very true. So there's Bigfoot's all over the place, isn't it? You've got them in Germany, you've got them in France, you've got them everywhere. God knows, I think every European country's got its own form of Bigfoot. Russia.
Right. They do. I mean, we've got Bigfoot reports from every continent except for Antarctica, and who knows? we don't have enough people down there to look around. But North America, we've got Bigfoot. We've got the Deloise ape in South America. We've got Bigfoot all over. All over Europe. The Russia has the Alma. The China's got the Yeren. We've got the orang pindak down in Borneo. There are ape-like wild men reported in Japan. We've got of course, the Yeti of the Himalayas, the Yowie of Australia. And the thing about these that fascinates me is all of these cultures have had this tall, hairy, ape-like, human-like figure in its belief system. All the way back, to time immemorial. And we've sort of found one in Africa. Africa had its stories of Bigfoot also. Have you heard of the Billy ape? Bili?
No.
Okay, this was, I don't know why people don't talk about this, so I guess that's why I am. But there are a lot of times when the local populations talk to Westerners who just came on the scene, talk to Westerners about animals that they see all the time. In China, it was the giant panda. Africa had the mountain gorilla and the okapi. These are animals that Western science didn't believe in. Yeah. Those things can't exist. But the locals know that they did exist, and finally Western science sees them. The mountain gorilla wasn't recognized by Europe until I think it was 1908 or 1903, something like that. The same with the giant panda. Western science didn't believe that until the early 1900s as well. But in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in the Billy Forest, the locals had reported a tall, usually bipedal ape that looked like a chimp but behaved like a gorilla and howled at the moon and was powerful enough to kill leopards and lions and eat them. And, of course, all that sounded ridiculous. until Western science went in and looked, and they're like, oh, wait a second, there are gorilla nests that are built in, and then they found what had built them were these tall chimpanzees, and unusually tall chimpanzees that built nests like gorillas, and they howled at the moon, and they were witnessed killing leopards and eating them.
Yeah.
And they weren't recognized by Western science until 1998. Okay, that wasn't very, very long ago, but this is, Africa's potential Bigfoot type of creature, and we ignored it until Western science saw it.
Right. And are they very rare out there? Well, if I was to go on a safari or something like that, would I find one or?
Probably not. I don't think that there are all that many, and they are way, way deep in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which also, I mean, when it comes to local populations knowing about something, the coelacanth was one of those. Locals in South Africa and Indonesia knew of these large fish because they would catch them. Fishermen would catch them and sell them at markets. People would buy them, and it wasn't until 1936. Well, because we knew of the coelacanth from the fossil record, and it was supposedly died out 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs did. And in 1936, a ship was fishing, and they caught one, and they didn't know what it was, and they called a South African museum, and the curator came to look and saw a coelacanth. They caught one, and there are two living populations of this fish that until 1936 was considered extinct for millions upon millions of years. So the point that I'm bringing with these is there are so many things out there in all deep recesses of land and sea that we don't know about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Dragons. Now, I'm in Wales. Okay? So we got the Welsh dragon here. We got the Welsh dragon here. We got the English dragon in England. Because there's a flag with the English dragon on it. It's so you got the Welsh dragon. I think every part of the British Island has its dragons. So what do you make of dragons? Do you believe that they ever did exist?
Boy, I would love for that to have happened, but I don't know. Dragons, along with Bigfoot, are another a creature that absolutely fascinates me because they are everywhere. There were dragon stories in Africa, and if you killed one of those dragons, there was a diamond in its brain. So you really wanted to get one of those dragons. There were dragons in North America, Australia, definitely in Asia, and Japan have their dragon legends. In Central and South America, we had Quetzalcoatl, the lead deity in the Aztec religion.
Yeah,
that was a flying serpent. It was a dragon. So we've got, why? If dragons have never existed, why do we have legends all over the planet of dragons? And they generally look the same. I think there has to be something to it. The scientists have come up with, it's just our collector, our more reptile part of our brain that we were scared of large reptiles at one point, back hundreds of thousands of years ago. So we just know dragons from there. Now that's insane. There are also thoughts that all of these cultures found complete dinosaur skeletons just laying out on the ground, and thought put the dragon together with it, but that doesn't sound true at all either.
Yeah, but I'm just looking here, and it says dragons are a creature of stories for many people. Blah, 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 blah. A dragon was reportedly killed in 1890 in Arizona by ranchers who spotted the 92-foot flying beast over their ranch.
Yes, this was and supposedly there was a photo of it, but the real photo can't be dug up.
Lost over time, yeah.
Yes, it was. It was a couple of ranchers were out and they saw this great flying reptile and they shot it and killed it and put a rope around it and dragged it into town. I believe it was Tombstone, Arizona. And they called it a dragon. You know, the way they described it, however, is it sounds a lot more like a pterodactyl type creature, which are reported from that area.
They must have put a lot of bullets into it, though. Let's face it, it's going to be something. It's hard enough to bring an elephant down, let alone a dragon.
Right. Well, the way they described it, it was 80-some or 90-some foot wingspan. That's an enormous creature. Yeah, but I mean, when it comes to what we call dragons, it's that takes up a lot of different types of creatures. There were stories of dragons in the southeast, in around Indonesia, and of course there. The Komodo dragon, which is an enormous monitor lizard.
Oh, yeah, you get out of the way of those buggers, I tell you.
Absolutely. I mean, even if they manage to nip you and you get away, the amount of different types of bacteria they have in their mouth you'll be dead within a day.
You think so? Yeah?
Oh, no,
really?
That's definitely, yes, absolutely. Their saliva is deadly poison just because the amount of bacteria in it.
Oh.
They're vicious boogers.
He's learning English.
There have been other reports over the years. Back in medieval Italy, there were reports of a dragon that was terrorizing a town, and it was not a winged dragon like a lot of European dragons were. It had 4 legs. And it was larger than a couple of oxen put together. It was a big animal, and it had what looked like a shield behind its head and 3 lance-like points on its face.
Sounds like a.
Now, what is that? It's a triceratops. It sounds like a triceratops. And the thing was finally killed by men on horseback, lancing it to death, but. It sounded like a triceratops. There is also a carving on a temple in India. In the middle of the jungle, there's a carving of a stegosaurus. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah. It's got the shields along the spine of its back. It's got the spiked tail. It's a stegosaurus. Where?
And I suppose that temple was built thousands of years after the actual event of the dinosaurs, yeah.
Well, millions of years after that. Yeah. So, I mean, and China's had a number of reports like this also. One description is of a giant turtle that inhabits this lake, but the description of the turtle sounds like an ankylosaurus, which was a large dinosaur with plates on it. It had a heavily armored back and a spiked tail. So, I mean, it sounds like a living dinosaur to me.
Yeah. It's amazing, really, isn't it? To think that these creatures could still be out there.
Right. Well, and some of these, the one in Italy is the one that really throws me.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in China, there's a whole lot of space in China. There's also, in Africa, there are legends in the Congo of the Mokalia Mamimbe, which means he who dams up rivers. It's an animal that's the size of an elephant. It's got elephant-like legs and feet. It has a really long neck with a small head on it and a long tail. And it spends most of its time in the water, and it eats plants. And it sounds like an Apatosaurus. And I mean, it's been reported for hundreds of years by the locals. And one Westerner who had gone there a couple of times and heard the legends brought a book of dinosaurs and showed them a picture of an Apatosaurus, and the locals were like, "That's it. That is the Mykale Mamimbe, and here's where it lives. Let's go. I'll go show it to you. Now, no Westerner's seen it, but it sounds like a living dinosaur, and so much of that area is uninhabited and thick forest, and why couldn't there still be a surviving dinosaur living there?
Well, this is it. Why not? I tell you. It totally amazes me because, like you say, all these countries, they've got not only legends of the Bigfoot. Everyone's got their own version of Bigfoot and they all bear a resemblance, but also every country seems to have a legend of a dragon.
Yes.
Which is obviously, and with Nessie, when I was young, the only monster I knew was Nessie, the Loch Ness monster. That was it. But over the years, so many people have been coming forward saying that there's this lake monster, that lake monster in this country, that country. All the countries, I don't know. It just gets me. It really does. There are so many things out there, and yet we can't get close enough to them.
Right, and that is, that's one of the problems with lake monsters is that, Loch Ness it's big. And it's a big lake, and there are a lot of lakes that are that big and bigger that are supposed to have lake monsters, but then there are also a lot of smaller lakes that are supposed to have lake monsters. And if there are lake monsters in a lake, it's not just one; it's multiple. Because, they've got to have that breeding population. So just the mere fact that we haven't caught one or we haven't had, good physical, evidence from any, makes me really wonder if these things really exist as living creatures and we see ghosts all the time. Why wouldn't we see a ghost of a dinosaur?
Well, that's it. Nobody's seen a ghost of a dinosaur.
Yeah, I know. We see ghosts of people from the 16, 17, 1800s, recent ghosts, but nothing goes back much farther than that. Why? I don't want to change that to ghosts since we're talking about monsters, but I guess
no, you can. Don't worry, you can. I was going to ask you if you've ever actually seen one yourself.
What, a ghost or a monster?
A ghost.
A ghost? Yes, I have.
Yeah.
I lived. The house I grew up in was an old schoolhouse that was turned into a 3-bedroom home, and I was one afternoon, and it's funny what I walked out into my hallway for. We had a hallway with all of our bookshelves, and I walked out of my bedroom that faced the hallway, my bedroom door, to get a book on dinosaurs because I was like 8 or 9 years old, and that's what I was interested in. And there was a boy standing in the hallway. He looked to be about 6. Yeah. And he was just standing there staring at me, and there was no 6-year-old boy, within 6 miles of my house. That kind of threw me for a loop. He had brown hair parted on the left side, a blue flannel shirt, and blue jeans. And then I realized that I could see the bookshelf through him. And I have no idea how long I stood there staring at him.
You never made any attempt to talk to him?
No, I was in shock because, here was a full-bodied apparition, and I was like 8 or 9, and I stared at it until the little boy blinked, and the shock that I was in broke, and I turned around and went in my bedroom and shut the door. And I didn't come out until supper because I didn't want to see the boy. So, yeah, I have seen that, and that I've always been comfortable with the thought of death because I've seen something that that's around after death.
Yeah. Yeah, but you want to come to this house? I've got plenty of those here. Absolutely packed with ghosts, this house. But you answered one of my questions. You know, one of the questions I was going to ask you was, as a little boy, did you like dinosaurs? And you answered that right in that story.
Right, absolutely. Well, and you know, frankly, I wouldn't trust a guy who when he was a little boy wasn't into dinosaurs.
I don't think I've ever known a little boy that's not been into dinosaurs.
Right.
You know? Yeah. I was always buying those. You did. So did my son. So did my son, you know, and everywhere we went, we had to buy one of these rubber blooming dinosaurs.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I still have one on my shelf on a shelf in my office at work.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a specialized dinosaur. It's Godzilla.
Oh, yeah. We bought him Godzilla as well, and his first iguana that he had, the first name he gave it before he changed it to Iggy the iguana, was Godzilla. Yeah, he was Godzilla mad. He had to watch all those old Godzilla films.
Is Godzilla based on something?
A monkey.
It's in the original 1954 Godzilla, it was based on a Tyrannosaurus Rex that was reanimated by nuclear testing. So it was an anti-nuke movie.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I've got you. Yeah. Very interesting.
Right, so getting back onto monsters again now. The favorite, one of the favorites out in America is your Mothman. We have an owl man. Well, we had an owl man. He hasn't been seen for about, God knows, about 20 odd years. The last time he was seen was down in Cornwall. But he was about 7 foot tall. And he does resemble, in a lot of ways, your Mothman.
Well, and the Mothman was only called Mothman because a journalist who was covering the Mothman encounters in 1967 was a big fan of the Batman TV show. It was pretty campy and cheesy, and he called the creature Mothman just because it sounded like a Batman villain. And the description. Some of the people who saw it described it as looking like an enormous owl.
Yeah.
So yeah, it very well could be something similar. There are creatures like Mothman that have been seen all over the world. Yeah, sure, Owlman. There have been sightings of flying humanoids in Mexico that resemble Mothman.
I've seen a flying humanoid.
Yes, I have not.
I have. I got up in the middle of the night. Now, I've told this story on here before. I got up in the middle of the night to go to the ladies' room for a wee, right? I got up in the middle of the night, and as you come out my bedroom door, right opposite is a window that overlooks the fields as far up as the cricket green. And right down there by the cricket green, there was something big flying through the air. And I'm not kidding you. It looked like an owl with very, very long human-type legs sticking out the back.
Hmm. And how big was it?
Well, going on the fact that it's about 200 yards, maybe a bit more from my house to the cricket green. And, of course, there was no houses in between because I was looking straight across the fields. And it was quite big. You know, it must have been... Now, this is typical blonde female here, okay, people? About 300 yards down to the cricket green, this thing must have been about 2 inches long. In my vision, as I'm looking at it.
Okay.
Flying about 300 yards down. So you work 2 inches or 3 inches. No, it's about 400 yards down there, okay? So you work 2 inches about 400 yards away. How big would that be if it was close up to you?
I hope you're not asking me.
It would be quite big. It wasn't an owl. It wasn't an owl, and it kind of flew, and then it flapped, but these legs, long leg things, stuck out the back, and I thought, oh crap! I've just seen Mothman.
And the people who are trying to figure out, a logical explanation about what these things are have come up with, it might just be a giant owl. Owls don't get that big,
and that's in this country. They don't get that big in this country.
Well, they don't get that big in North America either. But that's throwing another mystery at another mystery, because if it is a 6 or 7 foot tall owl, we've got a completely, that's a cryptid too. That's another type of monster. So, why are you explaining a monster with a different type of monster?
That's it. Well, this was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was a nice moonlight night, and this thing literally flew across the fields in my vision, looking through the window from the, And every time I go to the loo in the middle of the night now, my first thing is look out that window. Every time. So I've seen that out the window, and I've seen the Tremor wandering around in my garden. I don't know what else I'm going to say. And I live in a haunted house, and I live in the country where Merlin actually was born, just down the road. He was made there's a hill down there called Merlin's Mount. And I think that's where he was conceived, on Merlin's Mount. Well, there's been many a baby conceived on Merlin's Mount, I think. So it is totally crazy around this area. It's very, very magical county. Absolutely magical county.
I don't know if I'd want to live there. I love the paranormal. I just don't like it happening to me.
No? But you're not scared of it, though, are you?
No.
Oh, come on. Have you ever been out looking for a monster?
Well, when I was, I've always been a reader, and my parents got the local newspapers and read those every day, so I started reading them every day as well, even when I was fairly young. And in the early 1970s, there was a story about Momo, is what they called it, Momo, the Missouri Monster, that was in my state, and it was a Bigfoot that was in my state, and I got really excited because it was in the newspaper, so it's got to be real, right? And it was on Bigfoot, and I followed that story for a couple of weeks, and I like I said, I lived on a farm, and this was in July, and I had cornfields surrounded our house, so I would spend the day wandering around the cornfields looking for Bigfoot footprints. I didn't find any, but
okay.
So not as an adult have I gone, but as a kid.
Right, so you're in Missouri. I wonder where you were, actually, when we couldn't get the time right for this show. I thought to myself, I should have asked him where he was. So you're in Missouri, and you're out there looking for a Bigfoot. Now, Missouri has also got something called the Ozark Howler.
Right.
Yeah,
yes, and that is the far south of the state, the Ozark in the Ozark area, which also dips down into Arkansas below us, and they have the same reports down there it's dog-like. It's like a very large dog, about the size of that. It also has some cat-like qualities, especially around the face, and it's built more like a bear than a dog, and it has horns.
Wow.
This thing has been blamed for small animal deaths, chickens, other small livestock. And people have reported seeing it and hearing it in the woods, and it's called the howler because it has a howl that is kind of between a cat, a mountain lion screeching, and a bull elk's bellow. It's somewhere in between that far range.
Oh. You know, we have a lot of big cats in this country. And a lot of them have been seen by reputable people like policemen and things like that, you know. But a howler with horns, crossed between a bear, a dog, and a cat. He's a bit of a mixer, isn't he?
It is. It is. And it's really. I mean, there are a lot of these creatures that I find, well, all the ones that I included in the book I find absolutely fascinating. But whenever I talk to somebody who's actually seen one of these, it makes it even, it drives it home even more. There's one in Alabama called the White Fang, Thang. I don't know why, except for it's the American South, but it's a cat-like creature. It's about 6 feet long. It's got a long tail with a puff on the end of it like a lion. But it has really short legs and it's low to the ground. And it's white, and it tends to, you know, it can climb trees really, really quickly and, you know, disappear in the brush because it's so low to the ground. And again, this is seen in Alabama, but in this town that I live in the northwest corner of the state of Missouri, I talked with two different people at two different times, and these people didn't know each other, and they described seeing the exact same creature that you know, the people in Alabama have described as being the White Fang.
Whoa.
So I find that absolutely fascinating. And a colleague of mine, after he got finished reading my book, talked to me about the White Fang, because he said his grandfather would blame, you know, he grew up in Alabama, and he would blame missing chickens on the White Fang. And I absolutely loved that story until he told me that actually they knew it was their neighbor Booger who was stealing the chickens, but they didn't complain about it because he gave them free moonshine.
Okay. Here's one for you. Bunny Yip. Okay. Bunny Yip. Okay?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I describe it, please?
Oh, go ahead, please. Yes.
Right, so it was seen in 1800, right? And according to those that have seen the creature, the Bunny Yip, this is from Australia, the Bunny Yip. The Bunny Yip is similar to a hound in appearance with a horse-like tail and flipper-like legs, often seen by the Aborigines in the billabongs and swamps and creeks and places like that. Well, he'd need flipper-like legs, wouldn't he, to get around? So, what do you make of him, the Bunny Yip?
Well, it's depends on the depiction you see. Some are, you know, really kind of cat-like, but other ones are, you know, look like something indescribable. But they're.
Oh, so there's more than one Bunny Yip.
Well, no, it's they're described. It's just any sort of monster, dangerous monster that lives in the billabongs and in the, you know, swampy pool-like areas. But they're what can I say about Australia? It's full of weird creatures. So I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Aboriginals have you know, they also had stories of dragons. They had also had stories of the Yowie, which is the Australian Bigfoot. So yeah, why not? Bunny Yip sounds fun.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the name because it said bunny. Bunny, you know. And when I first thought, it's going to be a bunny monster with big floppy ears and nice little tail, you know, a little bunny tail and one thing and another. But no, it's got flipper-like feet.
Yeah, but bunnies in Australia have become monsters as well. So there you go. They have a bunny monster.
You know so many monsters, don't you?
Well, it's been an interest of mine since I was a child. So yeah, I know quite a bit. I think the one that I'm most interested in is Bigfoot, because I think it might be the one that is eventually proven to be real.
You think so?
I think, well, mainly because of the fact that, again, it's been seen all over the world for time immemorial. The Aboriginals, and they came over to Australia about 40,000 years ago, and they have legends of when they came to the shores that there were large hairy people that lived there, and they warred with them until the Aboriginals won, and the big hairy people started hiding in the bush. So I mean, and in North America, the Native American tribes have described these tribes of people that they've traded with, and they're enormous and hairy, and sometimes they'll eat the Native Americans. So I mean, there are these stories. I mean, there's just too many of them to ignore.
You don't think they're from another dimension, coming through some sort of portal?
Well, and that's something that is popular right now. Is the interdimensional Bigfoot, and I'm still on the flesh and blood type explanation, just because of the fact that we don't know for sure if there are if there are ways to travel between dimensions. I think there are, but scientifically we don't know that. So why are we explaining Bigfoot with another unknown? I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just saying I would like to see the flesh and blood Bigfoot be be ticked off the ledger before we go looking at interdimensional beings.
Yeah, it would be nice if it was a creature from this planet, but I
think it might be, and I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but again, the Australian Aboriginals said that they found a race of large hairy people, and the Native Americans called them large hairy people. Throughout Europe, they were the wild men of the forest.
Yeah. Back
in the day. There have been some cases now with DNA analysis, a few specific ones. One, Dr. Melba Ketchum here in the U.S.
That's right.
Took some samples and had the DNA analyzed, and what the analysis showed was that it was human DNA, but there were some anomalies that couldn't be explained. There was a scientist in Alberta, Canada. I can't think of the guy's name, but it was the same story. He had some, hair samples, blood samples, scat that he was certain were from Bigfoot, and he had it analyzed, and it came back human with some anomalies that couldn't be explained. And I can't remember if this scientist is from Cambridge or Oxford. I don't remember, but he did DNA analysis on the offspring or the grandchildren of an Alma in Russia, an Alma named Zana, that Russian villagers captured and eventually mated with, and she had a few children. Yeah, but I've heard of her. Right, and the grandchildren of Alma, of this Alma, had this scientist took their DNA and had it tested, and it came across as human, again, with some anomalies. So I'm just wondering if all of these Bigfoot reports from around the world, what if they're us, just bigger and hairier?
Well, this is what I was thinking about, giants. They've proven that a lot of the giants, or there has been giants that walk this earth, and red-haired ones, and yet there's also red-haired Bigfoot, isn't there?
Right. Yes, that's one of the reported hair colors of Bigfoot is
red.
Yeah, is red.
So it just makes me wonder. And there is I can't remember the name of it now, but there is a I wouldn't say it was an illness. It was more like I can't think what's where people grow a lot of hair. You know?
Yes, they used to be put in circuses as Wolf Boy, and
there.
I don't remember what the name of it is.
No, I don't remember the name. But what if these things are like a giant race that has that problem? You know?
Well, and it very well, that could have something to do with it. I'd never thought of that, but yes, there are certain smaller populations that have genetic problems that are passed on to the whole population. There was an article I read, I believe it was in the Telegraph or the Guardian, I don't remember, a couple of years ago about an island in around it's around the United States. It's in the Caribbean, I believe.
Yeah.
And this small village, all of the children are born as girls, and they're given girls' names. But when puberty hits, some of them grow male genitalia. So you're not Janice anymore. Your name's David, and it's because of a genetic problem that is localized to that one village. So, you might have something there.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's just something I often wondered. And another thing I often wondered as well was whether, like us, when we're ready and the dogs need to go out, you put the dogs out for their wee, don't you? What if there are spaceships flying around there that have got these Bigfoot like pets, and they put them out to go to the loo? That sounds crazy, but they land, they drop you go and do your business and come back here in 5 minutes' time.
And the UFO people hate it when people bring that up, and the Bigfoot people also hate it when somebody brings that up.
I'm going to have a lot of complaints then. Well, nephew lot.
But truth be told, there have been a large amount of UFO sightings and Bigfoot sightings in the same places at the same time. So, again, it's in my opinion, it's the same as saying that they're interdimensional creatures. Saying they come from a UFO, but there is some evidence that might be it. Bigfoot going out to take a wee.
Yeah, well, who knows? Nobody really knows, do they?
Nope.
Here, like I said, where I live in the Glendarroch Valley, and it's UFO highway here. On a clear night, you can go out there, and they're up and down like the M4. I'm not kidding you, Christian.
Really?
Yeah.
You see a lot?
Well, oh, yeah, you're always seeing them. I have friends come down and stay with me just to see the UFOs flying over.
I wanted to ask something about, in popular movie history, we've had, the Star Wars trilogy. And in the Star Wars trilogy, George Lucas sent a lot of his researchers out to find cryptoids or the sort of folklore creatures in order to feature in his film. He chose Chewbacca, if I remember rightly, and specifically because I think a lot of people could identify with the creature with already being in popular culture. But he said that his researchers found that there was more to it than that there was more to it than just folklore. And he said that he found it, I think in one interview he did, I think he said it was really interesting that he found that many people actually believe this thing actually exists rather than just being a bit of folklore from the local area. So Bigfoot has become more than just a sort of old wives' tale or just something people talk about around a campfire, because there's so many places around the world
The stories of Bigfoot go back hundreds of years, or something similar to Bigfoot. But this could be the reason why people think that maybe UFOs, there's something to do with UFOs and Bigfoot, putting them out to grass sort of thing. Because of Star Wars film. Maybe it's all come from that. I don't know.
I think it's experimentation. My guess is that there's some sort of, I don't know, messing around with DNA, because we've already alluded to that. Jason's already sort of alluded to there being some sort of DNA reason for their existence. I think, personally, I think there's kind of a mishmash of prehistoric and modern and potentially DNA evolution.
But then who 500 years ago in Germany's Black Forest, where we had, the wild men in the forest, who was experimenting with their DNA at that point? Who was experimenting with them and creating that creature at that point?
Well, that's it. They didn't even know DNA existed at that point.
Might not necessarily have been human.
Well, and that's where I was going, because it kind of the whole Zachariah Sitchin and Anunnaki thing is, he was convinced that that these people from the planet Nibiru had come down to mine resources here, and they saw the these ape men running around and did a little bit of genetic twisting on them to turn them into humans, so they'd be more effective slaves. So maybe it was extraterrestrials. I mean, who knows?
I don't think we will know for a long time yet. It's definitely not in my lifetime.
Well,
I think we're still in the early stages of studying this. What do you think?
Well, when it comes to Bigfoot, absolutely. It was big in the 60s, of course, in the 70s. In the 70s, we actually had a pretty respected anthropology professor, Dr. Grover Krantz, who was studying Bigfoot and was convinced that this thing lived. And today we've got Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, who's an anthropologist, or might be a primatologist, at the University of, I think, Utah State, maybe. But the thing is, it takes brave people like this to, buck the system and come out and say, you know what, the evidence shows here that there's something to this Bigfoot thing. Not a lot of university professors or scientists want to come out and say that, because they might lose their jobs or lose their credibility.
I often wonder what would happen if they actually did find one. How would it be treated?
Well, it depends. I think if it behaved like, what a lot of people think it is, was just an undiscovered North American ape, it would be slapped in a zoo. If it all of a sudden started talking to us, we might treat it a little bit differently.
Doesn't the Smithsonian have some sort of evidence?
They take everything they do. If you find anything, dig up a dinosaur bone or something like that, they'll come in and they'll take it.
Yeah, the Smithsonian has been blamed for a whole lot of things. The red-haired giant skeletons found in the American Southwest with 2 rows of teeth and horns and whatnot, 6 fingers and 6 toes. Those things were reportedly, in the early 1900s when they were discovered, spirited away to the Smithsonian, and nobody's ever heard from them again. I would, be hard pressed, I think, for this, to believe the Smithsonian would hide those things.
Well, yeah, there might be a reason behind it if they did, because if they were, say, motivated by keeping religion as the main influence and power on the world, because it would be an uncomfortable truth, wouldn't it? That something else may exist that would kind of counter sort of the Adam and Eve theory. If those people that were to do with the Smithsonian were being somehow influenced by powerful people who were very religious, it's a possibility.
But I see that point. Absolutely, I see that point. And for some things, I think maybe, like, you know, if they were the type of religious people who were in on the the Earth's only 6,000 years old, I could see them trying to do something with dinosaur bones. But I mean, wouldn't giants prove Genesis was right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'm going to see if you know this one. Honey swamp monster.
Yeah, the Honey Island.
Oh, you do. I'll find one in a minute. You don't know.
Well, the Honey Island swamp monster, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here, if that's okay.
Because this one, according to what I'm reading here, is a fairly new one, 1963, is it? Yeah, 1963, yeah.
In the 60s, yeah. And the Honey Island swamp monster, this is in Louisiana, Louisiana, the state. And it was seen by fishermen who were fishing in the swamp or hunting alligators or something. And it was seen on Honey Island. Honey Island is an island in the swamp called Honey because it had a large population of honeybees. Yeah. So maybe Bigfoot likes sweets. And it was, the description of a Bigfoot. It was about 7-8 feet tall, covered in hair, human-like. And, the first person who reported seeing it, saw it and thought it was, a tree until it started moving. And he was like, oh, no, that's, a living creature. And went and got scared and went and reported it to the authorities. And a lot of these people, I think are telling the truth, like in this report, because who wants to go to the police and give this kind of report? Because people are going to think you're crazy, especially in 1963 when this happened. But this is the tangent I was going to go on about Bigfoot. This creature had 3-toed footprints. Most Bigfoot footprints just look like enormous human footprints.
That's right, yeah.
But these had 3 toes. And just north of Louisiana is Arkansas. The Folk Monster, which they made a couple of movies back in the 70s on this story, this family reported a Bigfoot was throwing rocks at their house and chasing family members who were outside and peering through windows. The movies were The Legend of Boggy Creek, if you've heard of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it left 3-toed footprints. Momo, the Missouri monster, Missouri's just right on top of Arkansas. Momo had left 3-toed footprints. So when it comes to, we talked earlier about the migratory patterns of Bigfoot. To me, it seems like Bigfoot might have followed the Mississippi River. These 3-toed footprint would follow the Mississippi River up and down and be seen in these various areas. But why in the heck would it have 3 toes? What mammal has 3 toes other than a sloth?
I was just thinking that's about the only one I can think of.
That's it. Even the 2-toed sloth actually has 3 toes.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is something else that some people have speculated when it comes to the three-toed Bigfoot is North America had a giant sloth that its body could stand up on 2 legs when it was trying to feed off of things from trees. Yeah. So there are people who've thrown the speculation out there that maybe the Bigfoot's, this, at least the 3-toed Bigfoot is an evolved species of ground sloth. I'm not purporting that theory. I'm just saying what I've read.
Well, if it's anything at all like the sloth of today, then it's going to be very, very slow, and I can't see why anyone hasn't caught one.
Exactly. Something big and slow is not going to be evasive.
No.
And this is something. I'm going to take this back a step to when you brought up interdimensional Bigfoot, because that's a big that's a big thing right now, and one of the reasons is because Bigfoot tends to disappear in the woods, and where I grew up, there were woods. We had property that had a lot of trees, and I used to roam around in the forest, and there are plenty of times to where I stumbled on a deer that was 4 feet from me, and I didn't even know it was there until it got scared and ran off. And that's, not Bigfoot size, but a deer's about 150 pounds. That's not a small animal, and I didn't see it.
Well, this is it, isn't it? These wild animals are able to conceal themselves.
Right, and
they use the camouflage, and that's it. Yeah. Right,
and Bigfoot's supposed to be intelligent, so it could, I really seriously think, be able to hide.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely can blend in, I should imagine. All right, so now changing the subject. What do you know about vampires?
Oh, they don't sparkle.
No, we have Highgate Cemetery, which reportedly had a vampire. How true that was, I don't know. Cannock Chase is one of the paranormal hotspots here in Britain. And I know they've had werewolves. I wouldn't be surprised if they've had Bigfoot.
That's just down the road for me, that is Cannock Chase.
Is it?
Yeah.
Have they had vampires there?
12. Well, they had the black-eyed children, they get the UFOs, they get the strange...
There's meant to be a young girl that haunts Cannon Chase.
Cannock Chase has about everything.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. There are UFO reports there like crazy as well.
Yeah, they do. But they don't have the Bigfoot, though. They don't have the tall... I'm not aware that they have that, but they do have the black-eyed children, they do have the UFOs, they do have a lot of ghosts. They also have a time slip thing there as well.
Yeah, because most people think of Cannon Chase as the manor house, don't they? But it's not. There was a manor house. I don't know whether it's still there, called Cannon Chase. But there's the whole area. It's a very, very large acreage of area, isn't it?
Well, Cannock Chase is an old hunting forest. It used
what,
to
for
be,
old Henry VIII?
Well, I'm not sure which royal it was, but it was dedicated to just hunting for royal deer, I would imagine, originally. But
so Jason, do you know any stories about Cannon Chase?
Other than the things I've read that other researchers have written about, and yeah, it seems like a real hot spot of all sorts of paranormal activity. I do know something, however, about one of the cases that you mentioned. I've been to Highgate Cemetery.
You have. It's fantastic, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Let me tell a story. I was walking through Highgate Cemetery, and I was chewing a piece of gum, and I heard it was a raven or a crow. I don't know. I can't tell them apart when they caw, but it was really loud. So it was a still day. It was a bit cloudy, so it was kind of gloomy in the cemetery, and I was chewing gum, and I heard this caw. And then a second later, one of my fillings came out of my teeth. So I'm like, all right, so I'm in this cemetery that has vampire stories, and I'm having a tooth problem after a raven cawed. So I don't know what's going on. Yeah, I went there to the cemetery specifically, because of the vampire story, but I also went there because I needed to leave a biro at Douglas Adams' grave.
Oh.
Oh.
There's a little cup there for people to put pins in.
Yeah.
He had a bit about them in one of his books.
Yeah, I tell you, those mausoleums there are absolutely fantastic.
Yes, I took a lot of photographs. Took one. I took one of Karl Marx's grave. He's buried there as well, and it's terrifying.
Terrifying?
Yes.
Karl Marx's grave.
It's enormous head.
Yeah, I know.
It's like an enormous, evil Santa Claus is what it looks like.
Yeah, can you imagine coming across that in the dark?
Yeah, I know. Not really.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was back in the 60s. There was a report of a vampire.
That's right.
Trying to think of the name, but this is there were a number of articles published in the Highgate Express newspaper at the time. But there was a guy. His last name I think was Farrant, F-A-R-R.
Chris Farrant.
Chris Farrant. David. No, it was David.
David Farrant. Yeah.
David, who was with a group of people and spent Christmas Eve in the cemetery in 1969, and they saw what looked like a tall, dark figure in a cloak that disappeared over a wall.
Yeah.
And this is not something that they weren't attacked by it, but they labeled it a vampire just because of its look and the way it moved. And there was a big hunt on that. The police the police were there to make sure there wasn't any trouble, and no vampire was found. But there were a couple of hunts there to try and look for it.
Yeah, so that's where the story originated from.
Right, and from back in that event back in 1969, and just down the street from there, I made sure I went to the Angel Inn, which is that's where Graham Chapman used to get drunk and come up with ideas for Monty Python skits. I had to go get a pint there before I left.
Oh yeah, you have to, don't you? That is just one place where you had to go. You would have to go there and have a drink.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I would. I had, but when you ask about vampires, and this is another case, that and werebeings, like werewolves, these are stories that are all around the world. Every culture has a story of vampires. The basic European vampires is basically kind of boring because it's not Count Dracula. It's not the suave vampire who dresses nicely and is able to seduce women and this sort of thing. The basic European vampire,
drop dead gorgeous looking vampire.
Right. It's more like the Nosferatu looking vampire. That's absolutely terrifying. Right. There are stories throughout Africa, in the United of these as well, and Asia, South America, everywhere. The African vampires. It was interesting because when slavery was abolished in the United States in 1865, the now freed Africans in the South, a lot of them migrated to the coast and formed, they had all these different cultures from all over the continent that came together, and the cultures, came up with their own culture. And one of the monsters in that culture was called the Boo-Hag, which is the vampire of the southern United States, especially again on the coast. It's red. It's red. It resembles an old woman, and it's red because it doesn't have any skin. and it
Oh,
can come into any house that has a space, large enough for a mouse to get in, and people know that they're, being attacked by the poo hag because basically it's old hag syndrome.
yeah.
They'll wake up and they'll feel pressure on their chest. They can't move, but they'll see this red being on their chest. And what it does is it sucks energy. It does not suck blood. It sucks energy from its victim, and then it leaves. And if it likes the victim, it will keep coming back until it's sucked all their energy away. And then it peels their skin off and wears it around town.
Oh, God. I could go in shopping with that one.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and what the thing that they often say, when they're wishing someone good night is, don't let the boo hag ride you.
Yeah, over here it's bed bugs, isn't it? Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Boogeyman.
This is a little, bed bugs are annoying, but this, I'd say, was a little bit worse.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I'm going to be, do you know, I'm in this house by myself tonight. I'm going to be scared to go to bed now. I'm not worried about ghosts, but a boo hag. Oh,
Boo hag.
yeah.
Well, don't let the boo hag ride you. There, I just wished you good night.
No, I tell you what, no one gets to ride me at night. Right, let's see. What else have we got? Come on, tell us another one before I get dirty.
Well, I think you just did.
No, I didn't mean to. Sorry, people.
To go along with the vampires, werebeings. The one we think about is werewolves, and there are plenty of stories. The Beast of Gévaudan in was it 15th, 16th century France. There was a story of an enormous wolf-like beast who would kill women and children. Never would kill men, but would kill women and children if they were caught alone out in the fields. And people would go hunting for it, and they were convinced that it was a werewolf.
Yeah.
And nobody caught it. Nobody caught it. Finally, they shot a big wolf and claimed it was the beast, but then other people got killed. Eventually, something got killed. They don't know. They don't know what it was. What my speculation is that it was just a wolf doing these killings. Not a wolf, but a number of wolves.
Yeah.
Wolves, because wolves. The reason werewolves and wolves are scary was because in that area, that time in Europe, they were a serious problem. They would kill people. They would kill livestock. They would, until their numbers were taken down. They were legitimately scary creatures. And, I think a lot of, werewolf tales come from this. We have werewolf stories here in the United States that come from, not just the United States, North America, from Quebec, which was settled by the French, and Louisiana, which was settled by the French. They have the loup-garou, which is a werewolf, and it preys. It wanders the outskirts of large cities and catches someone. When it catches someone alone, it will ask for money and then try and coax them into an area where they're alone, and then it turns into a wolf and kills them. But there are stories all over the place. Farther north in North America, there's stories of people turning into bears. In Africa, there's stories of people turning into leopards, and the same in Central and South.
So this is like shape-shifting.
Right.
So this is where we come into shapeshifters. Then.
Right. The werewolf. I don't remember Lycus, maybe Lycos.
Lycos.
Yes, he was a king in ancient Greece, and he had invited Zeus to come and come to a feast, and he was going to trick Zeus and feed him human flesh because that was a big no-no, and Zeus realized that it was human flesh. and turned him into a wolf. And that is the very first, human turning into a wolf story that came around, and it, just kind of grew from there. Where the stories of like were-dolphins, there are river dolphins, pink river dolphins in South America, and there are stories down there of these pink river dolphins being able to change into humans, really attractive ones, and lure, people to the river where they will be dragged under and killed when the person turns back into a dolphin. So
very similar to mermaids then.
Right.
Especially the mermaid from Copenhagen. Who used to sing to the fishermen on people and,
Right, yeah, and the singing is something that also is transcends geography, because there was an American Indian story of it was in a southern state, might have been Mississippi, I think it was Mississippi, of river mermaids, and they would sing as well to lure people down into the water.
That's right.
So it's really interesting that these stories across the world, again, like dragons and Bigfoot, are so similar.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because this is what the Copenhagen mermaid. You've heard of that, haven't you, Christian?
I have not. I haven't.
Yeah.
You've stumped me on one.
Oh, Copenhagen. There's if you go to Copenhagen, you can buy a little ornament of a mermaid sitting on a rock. She used to sit on the rock, and she used to lure them with her singing into the water, the fishermen or anybody really, and then drown them.
There's a famous statue of her, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I know. I've heard. Yes.
Well, my dad bought my mum back an ornament of it, so I know.
The Scandinavians had a lot of seafaring nations, so they came into contact with a lot of bad weather when they were traveling for wherever they were going, and they obviously believed in the original gods, and a lot of the gods used to say, if you put a dragon on your ship, it would help you sail to where you need to go.
Yeah, not only that, but they used to put mermaids on the front as well.
That's correct, yeah. So they would often use it as guardianship as well. But where did they get the ideas from originally?
Well, I think the singing, especially a lot of these sailors and everything were shipwrecked and one thing or another, I think the singing could have been, like you said, it could be the weather. It could be winds. It sounds like sometimes when you... It depends on your environment where you are. Sometimes here, even in this valley, it sounds like someone's singing, but it's the wind. It's the way it whistles around. Yeah? So,
that could be a possibility, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, my crazy mind working here, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, and when we're going to... On the subject of Scandinavians, that they are also often looked at as some of the origins of were creatures, and like for your Norse berserker, wearing a bear skin, because the bear skin and the bear head, would give them power in battle. So these crazy large men with swords or hammers or whatever they had were dressed as a bear, had to inflict terror on people, and stories of them actually turning into bears or wolves or whatever they were using to inspire them. I mean that would be a werewolf or a werebear.
Yeah.
And in North America, we have that as well with skinwalkers.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, our Native American shamans who are able to don the skin of a particular animal and turn into that animal.
Wow, yeah, I've heard that before. Isn't there a Skinwalker Ranch?
I don't know how much that has to do with actual skinwalkers, but
It's, Bigelow's place, isn't it?
Yeah, Bob Bigelow's. I think Calm Kelleher, and I'm trying to think of the name of the other author. George Knapp wrote a book on that.
Yeah.
And a lot of really, really strange things happened there involving UFOs, what appeared to be a dire wolf, which has been extinct for more than 10,000 years in North America. Have been seen there, and weird things happen with the cattle. So it's an absolutely fascinating area.
Yeah. But there's mutilations over here and everything as well. You know, we get mutilations. In Wales, for instance, there was mutilations down near Swansea about 10 years ago. So I was looking up mutilations at one point, and I was quite shocked to find out that sheep and things here get mutilated. And I'm living more or less opposite a dairy farm. So I keep watching. Yeah, it's a bit frightening. But Bigelow's place, do you think that he's there doing experiments like somebody, like people say? Or do you think it's because he bought the place because there was a lot of stories about the place, a lot of mystery, and he's now doing research?
I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty positive that he bought the ranch because of all of the high strangeness there.
Because nobody can get near it, can they?
No.
It was for scientific research originally, wasn't it? Because I think the United States government had a hand in helping Bigelow set up different experiments.
Got a hand in helping Bigelow with a lot of things.
Well, I mean, because they had a significant interest in why there were so many different types of genres of paranormal activity, because it wasn't just one thing. It was like just about everything you can think of all happening in one place. It was almost as if there was some kind of time slip going on with different sort of eras of the paranormal genres sort of all slipping in and out, and also interacting almost. It's from what I've read about it and what I've seen in eyewitness accounts, as in on YouTube and whatnot. It's a fascinating place because it seems to have everything, a big melting pot of the paranormal in one place, but the government won't release its findings, which I find very interesting.
But you've also got Four Corners, haven't you? It's the same sort of thing there at Four Corners.
Oh yeah.
Is that right, Jason?
And there are I'm not sure where Four Corners. What are you referring to?
Well, where four states actually meet. Yeah.
All right. Yes. Well, just in that area, especially of the Colorado side, there are a whole lot of really strange things that happen there. There's a researcher, I can't think of his name right now off the top of my head, who's done a lot of work in that area because there are Bigfoot encounters and ghost encounters and lots of UFO activity centered in this one spot. There's a place on the East Coast. In New England, the Bridgewater Triangle, and it's the same thing. There are spots on Earth that seem to have more of a share of this type of activity. The question, with me is why. Where I live right now, there have been a lot of really strange, violent acts that have happened, and why? I don't know.
What do you mean acts?
Well, there's I'll just give you this one small town called Skidmore that's about a 15-20 minute drive from where I'm sitting right now. Back in 1980, the entire town basically shot the town bully to death on the street. one afternoon. He had been terrorizing that town for years, and the police weren't able to do anything about it, and then they shot him dead. More recently, this has been in the 90s. 2001. An 18-year-old told his mom he was going out to the garage to get jumper cables, and he just vanished. There were people outside, and nobody saw anything happen. He just walked into the garage, and poof, he was gone. Back in 2006 or 2005, 6 or 7, somewhere around there, an 18-year-old woman was 8 months pregnant, got a friendship, into a friendship with a woman online, and that woman showed up at her house and killed her by cutting her baby out and taking it home. There was also, going back to 1979, there was something that hit a soybean field right outside of this small town, like it's about 250 people, and left a crater. And they had the military, scientists were out there, the Federal Aviation Administration was out there, all investigating what caused this crater in this field, and nobody could figure it out. But later that year, after, when the soybeans grew, the area around the crater, the beans grew twice as high as they did everywhere else in the field, and there were no weeds in the crop, which was all bizarre. And this is just a smattering of weird things that have happened around where I live, and they all are centered. All of those were centered on one little bitty town.
Skidmore, did you say?
Yes.
And this is also near you.
Yes.
Is it something to do with you, do you think? Or do you...
No, it all happened.
I was going to say, Jason, move.
Well, and let me throw out another. Have you guys the name Michael Madman Markham?
Right.
Art Bell did a number of interviews with this guy back in the early 1990s. He tried to build a time machine.
Yeah.
And got arrested because when he turned his machine on, all the electricity in town went out. And that town, I mean, and people around the world are interested in this guy, and because of Art's show, and that town's 27 miles away from me right now. So there's so many weird things.
Do you ever go to that town quite often?
Well, I did. I did go to that town, and I interviewed people who arrested him, and who were there when it happened. The guy had disappeared, so I just had to interview people who knew him back in the day.
Right.
Oh, so he done a runner.
Yeah. Well, no, he built a time machine and disappeared.
Oh.
I was going to say he's gone in the future.
Oh, God, so he may just turn up again at some point and then just end up in someone's back garden.
Now,
wow.
one of the books, because I noticed all of this strange stuff, and I wrote a book back in 2009 called What Lurks Beyond, and I put a pin in a map and attached a piece of paper, or not a piece of paper, a piece of string that measured out 100 miles, and I put a pencil on the end of it, and I drew a circle. And what was within that 100-mile circle of my house, I found all the paranormal things I could find, and it was enough to fill a book.
Wow.
God, I'm going to do that. That sounds good.
Well, and that's one of the things that I encourage people in the afterward is if all of these strange things are within 100 miles of my house, they're in 100 miles of yours too. So go out and find them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That does sound good. That really does sound good. I'm going to try that, Jason.
Yeah,
well, credit me.
I will. This idea came from Jason Offut.
All right, thank you.
Okay, for this book, came from Jason Offut. Yeah. No, it's a good idea, that. I wonder what I'll find around here, because, like I said, this is Merlin country, Carmarthenshire. It's mystical, it's magical, it's full of legends, so I should find quite a lot of stuff, I think, Well,
I mean, how far are you from Cardiff? Wasn't there a giant?
Cardiff's about 90 miles from here.
Well, there you go. It's within 100 miles.
Yeah. I don't go to Cardiff very often, only to IKEA, but still. Yeah. I didn't know there was a giant in Cardiff.
You know what? I'm wrong. It was Cardiff, New York.
Oh.
Sorry, my mistake.
I was going to say I didn't know that one. There's, mind you, we've got carvings on our hillsides of giants and things like that, chalk carvings. And there is a lot of legends about giants in this country. And I seem to remember something about a giant when I was a child. I was born in a little village where everybody knew everybody else, and I suppose half of them were related to each other as well, and maybe that's why I'm so crazy. But I remember, and we were talking about giants earlier on in the program, and it came back. Something about a giant to do with the village that I was born in, but I can't really get the ins and outs of it. I hope I do remember, because in all these years, I've not even given it a thought, but it's like I knew something about a giant. When you know something, but you don't know what it is, or you can't put your finger on it.
It's happened to me more since I've gotten older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well. I suppose it is called old age, isn't it? Forgetting about things. But I just had this very, very strong, overwhelming feeling about something to do with the giant and the village that I was born in Sussex, in England. So I'll have to have a look around there and see if I can find if there's any legends to do with giants. It'd be interesting. Where was I? Okay, so...
Well, there was the Long Man of Wilmington.
That's it, yeah. Yeah. He's got he's holding some sort of club in his hand. That is the one, isn't it? I've got the right one, isn't it?
Yeah, and I believe there was also a pretty famous giant story based out of Ireland. I'm just drawing a blank on the name though.
Giant's Causeway, was it?
Possibly. I'm drawing a blank.
Northern Ireland. Was a story about a giant that built some steps out of stone
into the sea.
Yeah. Giant's Causeway, it's called.
Yeah.
That's the legend of the area, anyway.
Again, I mean, these stories of giants, like Bigfoot and dragons, are all over the world. There, I mean, even in islands out in Polynesia, they've stories of giants as well. Just, it's the why that I would like to know.
Have you ever heard of that island called High Brazil?
No.
That sounds familiar, but I couldn't place it for anything.
That's over here.
It is.
That's off the Irish coast.
It is, yeah, but it's a very interesting place because the people that reckoned it existed as an island were talking about it having all sorts of creatures we've been talking about today.
Yeah, apparently there was some sort of earthquake or something like that, and it sunk into the sea.
Yeah, but people used to put it on a map. That's very
Yeah.
unusual for a fictitious island.
Well, I don't think it's fictitious. I think High Brazil did exist.
Yeah.
I really do. But where exactly it is at the moment, I don't know. It's under the water.
But Jason, I noticed you like to look into sort of the time aspect of all of this, like the possibility of going into the future and the past interacting. What's your view on the possibility of time travel?
Okay, time travel those were as a kid, my favorite Star Trek episodes. when they went in the, yeah. Okay, I told you guys this was going to happen. Hey, honey, could you go upstairs? I know you do. Tell me in a minute. Oh,
I wouldn't worry about it too much, Jason. I've had the dogs barking here.
Right. Dan, don't forget the parrot. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Sylvia, honey, upstairs, pumpkin. I'll be right with you. Okay. When it comes to time travel, well, of course, I mean, physicists have said that time travel is absolutely possible. From Albert Einstein to Stephen Hawking, they've said yes, it's possible. We can't do it yet, but it's possible.
Tell me.
Okay. Well, I am more interested in the non-scientific time travel, time slips. I just think are absolutely amazing because I've talked with people who've experienced time slips because they've just been driving down an area and been driving down a road and that's a neat old house and wow, look at all that old farm equipment, and they get to where they're going and the next day they turn around and go back and the house isn't there, or the house is in ruins because it's so old and there's rusted machinery out in the field. What happened?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Time slips are really interesting. Mechanic Chase, which we've discussed earlier. There's a guy I know that's drove a car around there, and he had no idea of the history of that place. And he experienced, I think, about 10 minutes of very strange vision, which he saw out of his window, which was a row of huts in the forest with lights, and he could see shadows. He couldn't see the people very well, but it was very dark, you see. And then as he drove past, he thought, my God, this looks like some sort of party. Anyway, he drove past, and then about a day or so later, he mentioned it to somebody who lives around there, and on the phone, and they said, "Oh, there's nothing around there." And he said, "No, I definitely saw a load of huts, and I could see fire, and I could see lights coming from the windows. He said, nothing's been there since World War II." And he said, "Well, that can't be. I definitely saw like a mini hut village." He said the person who answered the phone said, "Look, the last thing that was there was around about 1944. It was a German POW camp. And nothing has been there since. It was dismantled probably in the late 40s. And nothing has been there since." But he said, he saw all these lights. And funny enough, he also said he made out these searchlights above as well, which were dotted around. So he reckons he experienced a vision of what was there, 60 years ago, 70 years, 80 years ago. Unbelievable. It's incredible what he saw, and he can't explain it. He had no knowledge of this place before. And when he was told that that's probably what he saw, how do you explain that? That is absolutely.
We had a guest on here who actually saw a whole village that didn't exist. And
you gotta ask.
I've had many time slips. I don't know why, but it happens to me all the time.
Did they have a time? Was there a time slip, or is this village, or this were the German POWs? Was it some ghostly thing?
Could have been, couldn't it?
A huge apparition because it's like a whole field.
I tell you what happened to me, Jason. Right? I was living with a boyfriend's family in Crystal Palace in London, and in a big old Edwardian house, gigantic big old cross between a Victorian Edwardian house, and The whole family was out one day, and I was left in the house on my own. And I'd been out in the garden, and it was quite hot and everything, so I decided to come back inside. I came back inside, I went in the kitchen, got a drink of water, had something to eat, and then decided I'd go into the sitting room. I opened the door to the sitting room, and it wasn't the sitting room that I knew. It was completely different. Dated wallpaper, furniture was different, everything. And I stood there. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then for some reason, and I've said this on the show before, some reason or other, I looked down and saw my shoes. As soon as I saw my shoes, everything was back to normal. And somebody told me that seeing something or looking at something that was modern day on my feet, right, was what broke this vision or whatever it was that I'd been seeing. So
right, that's
one.
I mean, I love those stories, but they're also kind of scary.
No.
No. Well, because I talked with a man who had worked at a it was like a country club in Oregon, in the state of Oregon, and it was the country club was an old dairy farm, and there was this really big the barn had been turned into dance rooms and banquet halls and restaurants, and it had been the rest of it the outside had been turned into a winery. So people would come, and then the wine was the big deal. Well, he was a waiter, and he went downstairs to get this specific bottle of wine, and the stairs were really creaky.
Yeah.
And then he got down to the basement, and there was water dripping, and the floor was muddy dirt. There were a bunch of wooden rooms that he didn't recognize, and he opened a few doors where the wine racks should be, and there was nothing in there. There was everything was in ruins, and he finally found a door that went to the outside, and it was kind of hanging off one of the hinges. And he opened it up, and he looked outside, and there was an old truck sitting out back that, looked like it could still run. And he was pretty convinced at that point that he'd gone back in time, because the basement's not like it should have been. And he was scared that if he stepped out that door to the backyard, he'd never be able to get home. That's the scary part for me.
Yeah. Is
if I took a step back 40 years ago and wasn't able to get home, that would be pretty terrifying. So he went back upstairs and got somebody to come downstairs and look at what he'd seen, and everything was back to normal, and they got the bottle of wine, and he took it up to his customer. But are there, and I'm getting closer in my head to believing this, that there are thin spots.
I believe so as well.
Right.
I definitely believe there is something in it, because this actually happened to me, and it was the shoes that triggered me out of it. And like this person said, I looked at something that was modern on my feet, and that's what broke it all. But that's not the first time. It's happened to me so many times. It's unbelievable. And but it's always in the past. It always seem to look or go back to the past. It never seems to be going forward.
Not all. Yeah, most of the time. There's one of the most well-known time slip stories had to do with RAF pilot. What's his name? Victor Goddard. I think it was Victor Goddard. And this was back in the early part of the 1900s, and he was flying, and he went through this big cloud bank, and when he got out on the other side of the cloud bank, he saw a landing field that shouldn't be there. And technician, mechanics' uniforms, and they were the wrong color. And instead of landing, he thought that was really strange. He banked back and went through the clouds, and when he landed back at his field, he talked to people about this, and they're like, "No, you're right. There's no field there." And it wasn't until a few years later that the airplane that he'd seen had been built.
Yeah.
And the RAF mechanics uniforms changed colors. They changed the colors. So this was a case of a guy describing things that hadn't happened yet. So he had slipped into the future. But I will agree with you that these stories of into the future are really pretty rare.
Yeah. Well, this is the point where we ask you, how can people get hold of you?
Well, my website, Jason Offut, that's JASONOFFUTT.com. I've got a blog there. I don't keep up as much as I should. A lot of information about me, contact information, a little bit of my history, links to all my books. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Okay. So you've got 18 books out there at the moment, and I know, and I wanted to really talk about this. So can we have you come back? Because you wrote a book on the black-eyed children, didn't you?
No. I wrote a book on shadow people.
Shadow people, that was it. Shadow people.
Yes,
Sorry.
I did write a lot of articles about black-eyed children, and I was about ready to write the first book on it. And my wife said, Jason, all the stuff you write about's weird, but none of it scares me except for the black-eyed kids. So please don't write this book, because if they come to my door, it's your butt. So I know what battles to pick, and that wasn't one I wanted. So
that's one of the things we spoke about. We spoke about black-eyed children a couple of weeks ago with a guest, and I was nervous all night because I jokingly said, if they knock my door, that I'll tell them where to go. And I went to bed that night, and I thought, oh my God, and every little noise I heard. I can handle ghosts. I can handle weird stuff like what people call demon. I call energy wotsits. But anything like that, I think I could even handle some sort of Bigfoot if it was out there in the garden or whatever. But these black-eyed children, there's something about them, isn't there?
Yes, they're scary. They really are.
They are scary. I think it's because if they were adults, it might not be so frightening, but because they're children, and it's the way they just stand there, or the way it's been reported that they stand there and stare, with these black eyes,
well, I'd be happy, happy to talk about shadow people and black-eyed kids if you'd like, because I've done a lot of research on black-eyed kids. So,
that's great.
Yeah, shadow people are very, very mysterious. They, I don't know how long I've got, but the point is that the speed that people say, the speed that they move.
Yeah.
I've never, ever seen anything like that. I've seen plenty of ghosts in my life, and I've seen things moving out the corner of my eye that are dark, but I've never actually seen what I would call a shadow person. So I would like you to come back, and I would like you to talk about that.
I would love to, and I have seen one. So
you have?
Yes.
Okay, I'm booking you in.
Oh, brilliant.
Right, don't go away after this, okay?
All right.
Right. So, people, this is it. We've come to the end of another show, and thank you for my host, Christian Delaney.
Yeah, thank you very much,
and our fantastic guest, Jason Offut, and who we will be definitely 100% having back. Otherwise, I'm going to put the thumb screws on him. Okay. Right. And this is it. Where can we be found, Jason?
Again, on my website or Amazon.com.
That's it. Yeah, Jason Offut .com.
Yes.
Offut, OFFUTT, people, and you can get all his books there. Okay, and that's it for another week. Bye bye, everyone.